In 2011, as news of their leader's death spread, millions of North Koreans collapsed in the streets in a display of hysterical collective mourning. To outsiders, the reaction seemed extreme, but to the citizens within, they were mourning their god. We often view the subjects of ancient empires, people who pressed their faces into the dirt before absolute monarchs, as part of a primitive, distant past. We assume modern society has outgrown the need for such total obedience. However, the mechanisms of absolute control have changed very little over the last 3,000 years. The methods used to ensure the submission of a population in the Iron Age remain remarkably consistent with those used today. We can track these parallels through two distinct lenses: the writings of history's first storyteller, Herodotus, and the declassified intelligence reports tracking the rise of Kim Il-sung. By placing these eras side by side, we find that the techniques for consolidating power repeat across civilizations and centuries. Maintaining this level of authority requires a specific type of psychological engineering, one that was perfected long before the advent of modern technology. Total power begins with the creation of an origin myth. To secure a throne, a ruler must first establish a narrative that makes their authority appear inevitable, often by manipulating or even stealing an identity. Herodotus recounts the story of the false Smerdis, a magi who seized the Persian throne by masquerading as the king's deceased brother. For 7 months, he successfully ruled an empire because the population believed his fabricated history. The impostor was only revealed when a noblewoman checked the side of his head while he slept. She discovered a lack of ears, a remnant of a past punishment, proving the man on the throne was a fraud hiding behind a dead prince's name. In 1945, the CIA investigated a similar theory regarding Kim Il-sung. Intelligence suggested the legendary guerrilla leader had actually died years earlier, and that Soviet officials had installed a blackmailed criminal to assume his name and lead the North. Regardless of the CIA's specific theory, Kim's regime spent decades crafting a meticulously curated mythology around his youth, centering his claim to power on his status as a heroic, near-mythical resistance fighter. Whether in ancient Susa or modern Pyongyang, the ruler must become the primary author of their own story. Control of the past provides the license to dominate the present. Once the leader is established, the state must organize the population into a rigid hierarchy. By codifying social standing, a regime ensures that every interaction reinforces the power of the state. In the Persian Empire, status was public and performative. Social rank dictated that equals greet with a kiss on the lips, while a lower-ranking man was required to prostrate himself entirely before his superior. This control reached into the most private aspects of life. In Babylon, the state managed annual marriage auctions, a system that effectively commodified family life and ensured that the government remained the final arbiter of social structure. Kim Il-sung modernized this through the Songbun system, categorizing citizens into 3 tiers based on loyalty: the core, the wavering, and the hostile. This rank dictates your reality, what jobs you hold, where you live, and how much food you receive. By weaponizing social status, the regime forces the population to monitor itself. When your survival depends on your rank, any act of rebellion becomes a threat to your entire lineage. The final stage of control involves moving the ruler beyond the realm of politics. By constructing massive, impossible monuments, a regime transforms its leader into a figure of worship. In Egypt, King Cheops closed national sanctuaries and conscripted 100,000 men for decades. The result was the Great Pyramid, a monument of such scale that it existed solely to broadcast his divinity across the horizon. After the Korean War, Kim Il-sung faced a country in ruins. U.S. generals reported there was quite literally nothing left to bomb. Amidst this total destruction, Kim had the opportunity to rebuild North Korea as a monument to himself. He replaced traditional religion with a pervasive cult of personality. His image was placed in every home and school, and his words were treated as sacred texts, demanding absolute devotion from a traumatized citizenry. At this stage of deification, the state achieves its ultimate goal. Treason stops being a political dispute and becomes a sacrilegious act, punishable not just by the law, but by the weight of a national religion. The reason we can see these patterns in antiquity is because there were voices outside the system. We know the inner workings of the Persian court because independent observers were there to record them. Herodotus traveled specifically to ask questions and interview witnesses. His work was designed to pierce through the official proclamations of kings and uncover the truth of how they operated. But in North Korea, there is no storyteller. The state has successfully removed the independent observer, closing the loop between what is happening and what the citizens are allowed to perceive as reality. These methods of control have been refined for millennia. They are not the product of modern ideology, but the oldest form of human subjugation. Protecting the truth begins with recognizing that the echoes of ancient tyrants are still ringing today.